There. After 6 long months, I'm finally done with the Banjo Kazooie script. Why do I even try?
So, back in October, Vice President of Marketing for Xbox Games, Aaron Greenberg, told fans, while discussing a poll about which series should get rebooted, that nobody cares about Banjo Kazooie, which caused all the millennials in the room to stand up, look Greenberg straight in the eye, and say, "Hey, that's not very nice. That's my childhood." Greenberg has since clarified that his statement was meant to be sarcastic.
Sure, Dan.
But it got me thinking, should we care about Banjo Kazooie? What is it about this game in particular that makes it care-worthy? Should this series make a comeback today, and would it actually still work? Hi everybody, I'm Bankle Monkey, and welcome to another episode of Should You Finish It, the show where I give games I've failed to finish another try and see if it's worth seeing those credits roll. No spoilers if the game is worth finishing, spoiler warnings later in the video if necessary. Cool? Cool. Today, we're talking Banjo Kazooie, which I know gets a lot of 90s kids' nostalgia glands pumping full of Surge Soda and Dunkaroos, but I kinda missed the boat on this game. I never owned Banjo Kazooie. A friend of mine did, and I got to watch him play it a lot, but I never really got to play it. So without any of that pesky nostalgia getting in the way, let's find out if Banjo Kazooie holds up against the test of time, and if it's really a series that we should care about today. As soon as you boot up the game, you're hit with something that will be a constant throughout the entire game. Wonderfully goofy sounds. Everything makes a funny sound, from collecting items to the way characters talk. It's got real Saturday morning cartoon vibes. I wish I could play you the audio for the entire opening cinematic without getting copyright struck into oblivion. It's just a big ol' cacophony of instruments, animal sounds, and other cartoony sound effects. This, Vice President of Marketing for Xbox Games Aaron Greenberg, is why people care about Banjo Kazooie. Because it's wacky and fun. On the surface, at least. Foreshadowing. Next, we're introduced to our antagonist, Gruntilda the Witch. She's doing that classic evildoer thing of asking an inanimate object who's the hottest hottie around. But when she discovers that it's somehow not her delightful self, and instead it's Banjo's sister Tootie that's actually the cutest, she does what any rational person would do in this situation. She switches to a healthier lifestyle. She starts eating better, exercising more, and kidnaps a child with the intent of disfiguring them. Okay then. Gruntilda plans to use a machine to take all of Tootie's beauty and transfer it to herself. They even show you how this will go down if you get a game over. Gruntilda comes out looking like this. Okay, wow. Horny jail for you, game. And Tootie comes out looking like this. This has to be some sort of statement on beauty standards in society as a whole, right? Like, I'm sure Gruntilda has her reasons, and we're gonna learn all about them as the game progresses. So Grunty kidnaps Tootie. Bold choice of words there, Tooters. And it's up to Banjo and his birdie buddy Kazooie to lock together like a Megazord and use all their super cool abilities to save Tootie and defeat Gruntilda. Once they learn them. Scattered throughout the game are these molehills, where Bottles the Mole is waiting to teach you an ability. The opening area, Spiral Mountain, is loaded with molehills and acts as a tutorial area. Later areas also have molehills that teach you more advanced skills, and so you don't get overwhelmed learning every move all at once. I really like this tutorial. It breaks down all the different abilities into bite-sized lessons, complete with a safe area to practice them. And sometimes that involves fighting vegetables. Fuck you, cauliflower! It's also optional, so if you're already a pro, you can be right on your merry way. I, however, have a lot to learn. And the first thing I learned? Kazooie is really mean. Bottles is here teaching us abilities out of the goodness of his little heart so we can save Banjo's sister from imminent uglification. But Kazooie feels the need to call him a barrage of mean nicknames every time she addresses him. We got Goggle Boy, Worm Breath, Specky, Root Muncher, Short Stuff, Jam Jars, Bottle Boy, Beetle Breath, Bog Eyes, the list goes on. And as we continue into the game, we see that the nicknames aren't just reserved for Bottles. She just kinda seems to hate everyone. Banjo, by contrast, seems very friendly, a little doofy, but a very earnest fella. Opposites attract, I guess? But Kazooie must have her reasons for being so unpleasant, right? And I'm sure we're going to learn all about them as the game progresses. The second thing I learned, this game looks really good. You know, for a Nintendo 64 game. And being the best looking game on a console is kind of Rare's thing. You know, Rare, basically the only company you could trust to consistently make good games for the Nintendo 64 other than Nintendo. They revolutionized console gaming graphics 4 years prior to Banjo when they released Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. Up to this point in history, you'd never seen 3D monkeys look this good. And that's some more Horny Jail. And Banjo continues that Rare tradition of top-tier graphics. It draws you in by being bright, vibrant, colorful, and all in all just really pleasant on the eyes. It won't always be bright and colorful, but even when the levels are more on the oozy side, they're still oozing charm. All of that to say, it's definitely one of the best looking games I've played on the 64. The third thing I learned, it's really hard to see how good this game looks because this camera is crap. It's clunky, gets stuck on walls, and it is really imprecise. It makes just navigating levels harder than it needs to be, but it becomes a much bigger problem later when you get the ability to shoot eggs. I never felt confident that an egg was going to hit what I was aiming at, but I've got to give this game the littlest bit of slack because this camera complaint is partially my own fault. You see, I'm playing this on the Switch Online service, not the original N64 hardware. Since the Switch version is probably the most readily available way for your average person to play this game these days, it seemed like the best way to cover it for y'all. But if you look very closely, you might notice some subtle differences between the 64 and the Switch's controllers. Namely, the C buttons have been replaced with an analog stick, and on original hardware, you would click the right or left C button and the camera would move one, I guess I'll call it a click, to the side. On the Switch, however, we've upgraded to the analog stick, allowing for a full range of movement. But the controls haven't changed since the Nintendo 64, so you have to push the analog stick to the side to get the same effect. This leads to you slamming the stick to the side over and over again to get it to turn multiple clicks. And because it's one stick acting as 4 buttons, it can and will mistake your left and right inputs for up and down, which either zooms the camera in and out or puts you in first-person mode. This will inevitably f you up at one point or another. And yes, they make a Nintendo 64 controller for the Switch that I could be using, but I'm not forking over another $50 on top of the Switch Online annual fee to play this game a little better. So we're just gonna have to grin and bear it. Oh. So we do our tutorials. We go over the crappy camera controls, the different kind of jumps, how to climb things, how to smash stuff, the basic combat moves, and how to swim. Oh god, it's a double whammy of rough. The movement controls and the camera controls do not play together nicely. You either press A to do little baby swim kicks with Banjo, or press B for massive chicken breaststrokes with Kazooie. There is no in between, and neither feels like the right speed. And having Banjo's bare ass blocking the majority of your view doesn't make things any better either. But old games have old controls, and if this series made a comeback, the camera and movement would obviously get a modern refresh. It would only make it better. That's definitely not a deal breaker for the future of the series. Now that we're up to speed on the controls, we're ready for Gruntilda's Lair. This will be the hub to all the other worlds we visit in the game, which sounds a lot like another classic Nintendo 64 game's castle, just a lot more dingy, dirty, and disgusting. And sparkling bright against that dark level design is our first Jiggy. I think there's a whole Curious George book about this exact thing. Jiggies are used to open doors to new levels, but you don't just take them to the easily findable level entrance and it opens. You have to find these unfinished jigsaw puzzles hanging on the wall and complete them using said jiggies. Once the full puzzle picture is revealed, the door for that area will open. At first, it feels a little unnecessarily complicated to have to take a slight detour across the room to open the door you wanted, but by the end of the game, it's full-ass tedium and frustration. The last few puzzle pictures are hidden on the other side of Gruntilda's lair from the corresponding door, and if you missed it earlier, guess who's got some backtracking to do? You. It's you. But we've opened the door, and now we're on to the obligatory grassy first level, Mumbo's Mountain. and it's finally time for this collectathon to truly begin. First up, each world has 10 Jiggies to find. You earn them by helping folks, hurting folks, helping folks by hurting folks, or finding them hidden behind puzzles or platforming challenges. Each level also has 5 Jinjos, which are these weird duck fairy demon things. They kinda creep me out. Not sure why, but they do. Finding all 5 earns you one of the 10 Jiggies per world. Next, there's 100 music notes per level that are used to open doors to other sections of Grunty's lair. There's blue eggs you use for ammo for Kazooie's egg shooting ability, Mumbo tokens you give to Mumbo Jumbo, the totally not problematic witch doctor shaman guy, which allows him to turn you into different things. More on that in a bit. There's honeycomb pieces that add to your health bar, red and yellow feathers for skills you learn later, and free lives in the form of these buff bear boy statues. Not to mention any one-off collectibles you might need to earn a Jiggy. And despite this all sounding like a lot, it never really feels that way. Maybe it's the way the collectibles bounce around, or the goofy-ass sounds they make when you collect them. Maybe it's the level design itself being so inviting to explore, but gathering all this random junk is so satisfying. And then they use that satisfaction to incentivize practicing your new abilities by hiding more collectibles behind said new abilities. That's quality game designing there, Rare. For example, here in Mumbo's Mountain, you learn the Talon Trot, which lets you climb steeper surfaces than you can as Banjo. And wouldn't you know it, there's a bunch of music notes hanging out on the steep parts of the mountain. The Talon Trot also happens to be noticeably faster than running around as Banjo, so I ended up trotting around at the speed of sound most of my playthrough. But then you gotta hear Kazooie squawk every single step of the way. And her piping up all the time totally doesn't get old. Also, using the Talon Trot is the fastest way to find enough Mumbo tokens to have Mumbo Jumbo perform a transformation. So you visit Mumbo, Kazooie calls him Hut Boy, because insulting the people that are helping you is always the fastest way to get what you want, and we transform into the almighty and powerful Termite. This form lets you climb the nearby Termite Hive, which is where you find the last of the music notes and a Jiggy on top. Mumbo's transformation magic is limited though. You can exit the world while you're still transformed, but you won't get very far before the transformation ends and you turn back into the codependent bear and bird duo. That doesn't mean you shouldn't wander around Grunty's lair in your transformed body. You might just find some secrets waiting for you. Once again, excellent game design here. See Vice President of Marketing for Xbox Games, Aaron Greenberg? We care about Banjo Kazooie because of its fantastically crafted game design. So say you've had your fill of collecting crap. As long as you've learned all the abilities, snagged a couple Jiggies, and at least 50 notes, you're good to move on to the next section of the lair. And I appreciate that you don't have to find everything in every level to progress in this game. I mean, I got everything, but you don't have to. Slacker. Up next is Treasure Trove Cove, the obligatory beach level. But I love how Rare adds their own little twist on most of the areas in this game. It's not just a beach level, it's a pirate beach level. And that adds some fun flavor to it. Like check out these mouthy treasure chests. And what would a pirate level be without a pirate? And we get Captain Blubber, the crying pirate. Why are you like this, Kazooie? Who hurt you? Can't you see Captain Blubber is hurting? The poor guy lost his gold. I'd cry too if I lost my gold. Then again, I'd need to have gold to lose gold. This is also the level where you learn to fly, which could be very OP in an open world game like this, but Rare cleverly controls when and where you're allowed to fly by requiring you take off from these flight pads. I also like that just being in the air doesn't deplete your stock of red feathers that are your flying currency. They're only used when you press A to ascend higher. Had enough blue skies and bright colors for one day? Good. Our next stop is Clanker's Cavern, because Rare wanted to see what would happen if they used every shade of brown the 64 could shit out. And what they got was the seweriest sewer level of all time. And amongst the radioactive crabs and the pipe-dwelling jump scare monsters is Clanker. He's Grunty's mistreated garbage grinder, and he needs our help. Which unfortunately includes a lot of swimming. Namely, swimming way down to free him from this lock. You gotta swim through the key 3 times, and surprise, the camera continues to stink as bad as the garbage Clanker's been grinding. This is probably the hardest thing you have to do in the first half of the game, and most of the difficulty is just not being able to see the stupid key consistently. Watching that breath meter get lower and lower got me hearing the Sonic Water Panic music whenever I tried this. And you can tell tell that Rare knew they made this a little too hard, especially for a game marketed towards kids, so they slapped Gloop the fish down there to poop out air bubbles to refill your breath meter. But it's still really easy to lose sight of Gloop or to just misjudge where the air bubbles are because, once again, the camera. I highly suggest that you do this part of the level first thing, because if you drown trying, all the music notes that you've already collected so far in this level get reset. And if you want to get all 100, which you might, hint hint, you have to collect them all without dying. And this is the furthest I ever saw my friend get in Banjo Kazooie. Yep, we were just dumb little 90s kids struggling to raise up old Clanker. But as an adult, this is super exciting. Everything beyond this point I am seeing with totally fresh eyes. And what these fresh eyes are seeing is a constant barrage of gross out humor. I mean, there's been a fair share of booger gags up to this point already. Grunty telling Tooty she'll soon need bigger underwear was weird. And Kazooie having a little whenever she poops out an egg is, yeah. But it really leans into the gross with Clanker. He has some rotten teeth that need to be knocked out, which, after some gorilla dentistry, allows you to go inside of Clanker. And let me tell you, this ain't the inside of Monstro from Kingdom Hearts. There is no whimsy to be found in here. It's just gross. Why do the walls have to be so meat? But sure, we'll swim in his stomach juices. It's what you gotta do if you want them jiggies. Before we head to the next level, I want to stop and introduce another character in this game that flies under the radar. Gruntilda's sister, Brentilda. She hides around the castle in odd places, and she shares little factoids about Gruntilda, and they're all ridiculous, juvenile, and often downright disgusting. Take these for example. Grunty brushes her teeth with moldy cheese-flavored toothpaste. I also know that sweaty gorilla feet is her favorite smell. And you'd be sick if you saw her enormous sweaty yellow undies. This is weird, right? Rare went out of their way to give each response 3 different answers, so those words in the Wiggly text can be any of 3 different options per playthrough. That's a lot of attention put on something so juvenile. These do serve a purpose in the grand scheme of things, but come on, even if this game was made for kids, I think at some point even children are gonna feel like the ooh, everything's gross joke is played out. Also, why is Brentilda hanging around her sister's house? If you hate your sister so much, why don't you just leave? Speaking of leaving, after escaping the sewer, we're off to Bubblegloop Swamp, which is definitely not my favorite level. Any level where you can't step on a majority of the ground without taking damage rarely sticks out as a fave, but I do like that the solution to avoiding the piranha water is to slap on some SpongeBob boots and run for dear life. You can also have Mumbo turn you into an alligator here, which might be the cutest transformation in the game, but that alligator, of course, has to get into an eating contest with another gator, complete with all the slurping and burping sound effects you could never ask for. Next was Freezeezy Peaks, the obligatory snow and ice level that's been spiced up with a Christmas theme, complete with a Christmas tree, Christmas lights, a deadbeat father, a racist uncle, and children crying about not getting any presents. Ah man, takes me right back to my childhood. There's a lot of fun challenges in this one. Dive bombing the snowmen, decorating the Christmas tree. The toboggan races though, I did not enjoy at all. This is also one of the very few instances in the game where you have to backtrack to get a Jiggy, because to beat the hard toboggan race, you have to learn the sprinting ability from Bottles in the next level, which is the obligatory desert level, Gobi's Desert. It's full of pyramids and tombs that are just begging for you to explore their secrets, and some of those tombs are begging you to shoot eggs in their nose to unclog it. Okay, we've got matching puzzles, magic carpets, animal abuse. That's Gobi, by the way. The camel we beat up so much that he flees the desert is the namesake of said desert. Mad Monster Mansion is where the game really spikes up in difficulty. There's a lot of ghosties and skeletons creeping around, and they're all dead set on making you, well, dead. Solid theming with this level. It's got some legit spooky stuff in it, like turning into a pumpkin. Ooh, and then we shove it down a sentient toilet, because of course we do. Next is Rusty Bucket Bay, which is one of the cruelest water levels I've ever experienced. The water is so polluted that just being in the water depletes your air meter, and going underwater kicks it into double time. Pair that with toxic sludge, loads of jump scares, and bottomless pits inside the boat, which doesn't make any sense. This level is a true test of your mastery of the controls. It also has my favorite song in the game, which only softens my hard feelings towards this level a little. Soundtrack is fire, by the way. Grant Kirkhope knocked it out of the park here. Finally, there's Click Clock Woods, which is a giant test of your patience. You enter a hub with 4 doors, and each leads to the same forest, but in a different season. This lends itself to some real clever puzzles, like how to grow a plant as tall as possible, or hatching an eagle and helping it grow big and strong by feeding it caterpillars. But the collectathon aspect becomes an absolute slog here. You have to look through every nook and cranny of the map a minimum of 4 times to see what might have changed between seasons. I spent so long looking for the last 4 music notes here. They were on the roof of the house, by the way. The slippery ass roof. And none of this is made any easier by the level revolving around climbing to the top of a giant tree with really small platforms. The last regular level is just such a time sink. Time like a clock. Like Click Clock Woods. I get it now. I get it. And that brings us to the end game. Time to go save Tooty and defeat Gruntilda and bring peace back to the world or whatever. But I find myself kinda meh on the whole thing. Like, somewhere along the way, the joy that this game was filling me with at the beginning got replaced with indifference. And I think that comes from finding very little to like about the characters. Kazooie is just so annoying and rude, and Banjo, despite seeming like a nice guy, does so little to disrupt the assholery that he borders on being an enabler. And that's about as much personality as we get from them. The heroes can be summed up as annoying and a yes man. That's not great. Some games have a silent protagonist, so you can project your own imagination onto how they react in situations. Others have full story arcs where characters' personalities are explained and given nuance. Banjo Kazooie hits this rarely seen middle point where the characters have big, negative personality traits, but nothing to explain why. And these traits serve no other purpose than to be loud. And this loud ass energy wore on me until I just didn't care what happened to Banjo or Kazooie. I stopped caring about Banjo Kazooie. Oh God. Maybe Vice President of Marketing for Xbox Games Aaron Greenberg was right.
I told you, bro.
And it's not because of the gameplay or the presentation, it's the plot and characters that bog Banjo Kazooie down. Gruntilda wants to steal Tooty's beauty, and that's bad. What drove her to these lengths though? The game doesn't say. But if I had to guess, maybe it was everyone in this game constantly body shaming each other. Which makes very little sense because everyone is also super disgusting. Everyone is gross. Everyone is mean. No one is sympathetic, and by the end, I didn't care how things turned out. Did I just overanalyze an old video game? Yes. Did it make me think that you don't need to finish Banjo Kazooie? Also yes. Spoilers ahead. To save Tooty, Banjo and Kazooie must traverse Grunty's Furnace Fun. And despite the intimidating name, it's actually a game show testing your knowledge of the game. Name the location. What makes this sound? Fun facts about Gruntilda that you learn from Brentilda. Yeah, I told you they made those gross facts relevant in the end. It's a long gauntlet of small details that you were supposed to notice, but easily could have missed. It also shows how badly Rare wanted you to immerse yourself in the world they created, but I ended up not enjoying that world. It was like a walk down memory lane, but every step is a sideshow bob break. But if you manage to triumph over the trivia, Tooty is saved. But not without Kazooie calling her an ugly thing. Oh my God, stop. And Gruntilda covers her getaway by starting the credits. Cut to Banjo, Kazooie, Bottles, and Mumbo having a barbecue and bragging about how amazing they are. But Tooty reminds them they never actually, beat Gruntilda. So they hightail it back to the castle to have one final battle with that witch. But to access this final battle, you have to collect 94 of the 100 Jiggies in this game. Collectathon indeed. and the fight itself is absolutely brutal. At no point does the camera feel worse for seeing where you're going or where you're aiming than in the final fight with Grunty. Trying to dive bomb her was the absolute worst for me. Fortunately, there are a few things that you can do to make it easier. That is, if you've explored every inch of this godforsaken world. In the last room before the big fight, there are note doors that lead to a room to restock all of your eggs and feathers for the fight, and one room that has another jigsaw puzzle on the wall that needs 4 more jiggies. But if you get 98 of the game's 100 jiggies, you can double your life meter, and with any luck,
kick that witch's ass.
The Jinjo-nator shows up at the last minute, and once you painstakingly free it by shooting eggs into its statue, it dive bombs Gruntilda until she falls off the top of her lair and is crushed by a giant rock. Cut to our heroes on the beach and, damn it, Rare, horny jail! Horny jail! The day is saved. The end. So, if you ask me, you don't need to finish Banjo Kazooie. It feels dated in its gameplay, controls, and its focus on toilet humor and rude characters. But should it get a reboot? Sure. You can take these characters and make a new platformer, but I don't think it will have the same essence as the original game. I mean, this has happened before. Nuts and Bolts, anyone? The game that kept the characters but completely changed the vibe and gameplay? Oh, we don't talk about that one. Right, because it didn't feel like a Banjo game. But if they do reboot the series, I suspect characters will have reasons for behaving the way they do, not just being rude or disgusting for no reason. It would be a very different game, and maybe one I'd feel better about playing. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything happening here on the channel. Also, since I started writing this, they've added Banjo Tooie to the Switch Online service. And if you want me to take on the sequel as well, let me know in the comments. But that's it for today. Thank you again, and have a good one.